Okay, here we go again on the mystery of death. The mystery of death. So, my friends, we've been talking a lot and have come a long way in this series on the mystery of death. And I want to take a short break today to actually go into some science, or what my critics would call pseudoscience. So I am going to read a little bit from my notes as well, and then tell you how we can go from here to here, a journey without distance, from the beginning and also the end, going back to that famous poem from T.S. Eliot, "We shall not cease from exploration." And the end of our exploring is to arrive where we started from and know the place for the first time. So I've already spoken a lot about naive realism, subject-object split, matter as the ontological primitive, which are basis of current science, and also the fact that the look of the world, it depends on what's looking. There's no such thing as the look of the world. Okay, now a little more on this. So I'm reading from my notes and also from articles I've done before. Even as modern society turns away more and more from organized religion, spiritual questions linger. The most universal question, after asking if God exists, concerns life after so-called physical death. As complicated as this issue seems to be, it can be broken down into three perspectives that in themselves are actually quite easy to understand. The perspective of a believer supports life after death. The skeptical perspective, usually also the scientific perspective, denies it. The undecided stand in the middle. And so on. Yet, even where militant skeptics and devout believers declare their certainty, everyone bases their position secondhand. The lack of direct proof renders the afterlife a non-question. It has been a non-question for as long as recorded history. Therefore, the fundamental issue is actually whether the afterlife can be transformed into a viable question. I believe it can, but it requires an open mind that has discarded the received wisdom that skeptics and believers both cling to. Turning the afterlife into a valid question must return to basics, which means clearly defining our terms. The most basic term in this case is consciousness, because without consciousness, we can't even ask these questions. Because if you don't specify what consciousness actually is, you wind up worrying about the survival of the soul or of me and the individual ego personality. Even if these pitfalls are avoided, Eastern traditions are filled with equally confusing notions of Jiva, Atman, Brahman, Nirvana, Satori. If there's a definition of consciousness in the absence of bias, predisposition, received wisdom, myth, group pressure, wishful thinking, fear, apprehension, and mental figments of every sort, then life after death will become a viable question. So, what can we actually truthfully say about consciousness that no reasonable person will disagree with? Here I relate a few things that I've been able to explain to people over the years, or at least I think I've been able to. There is only one consciousness. To subdivide consciousness makes no sense. The point is lifted almost verbatim from Erwin Schrödinger, the eminent quantum physics pioneer. I think he said something like, to divide consciousness is a mistake, or words to that effect, but one consciousness. So Philosophically, the one consciousness position is common to what we call monistic schools, non-dual schools, because, because they repudiate any true difference ontologically between the one and the perceived many. Yet when dealing with everyday people, it is obvious that we all cling fervently to separate individuals, outfitted with my family, my house, my body, my mind, my soul. To crack this allegiance requires arguments like the following. Now, listen carefully. When you get wet, do you call it my wetness? If you sing the Star-Spangled Banner or any other, song as you walk down the street, did the song walk with you? If you imagine your mother's face, where is that mental image located? The brain has no pictures in it and no light. When you imagine your mother's face, you simply call up what you wish to see. In all these examples, the experience seems personal, but it is actually rooted in shared consciousness that is applicable to everyone. All of us have access to this experience. The second point reasonable people can accept is that this one consciousness cannot be located. I've made this point many times, that consciousness has no location because it's formless, and being formless, it must be infinite. This point sounds like a hard sell, but in everyday life, the argument is easily based upon physics. Sorry, I should have cleared my throat before and drunk some water, but I was keen to share this with you. So I didn't drink enough water, big deal. Cosmologists and quantum physicists agreed that space-time originated in a domain variously referred to as the 0 point, the quantum vacuum state, or the realm of pure mathematics that isn't in time and space. The entire universe, as well as individual subatomic particles, emerged from this pre-created state, the proto-state before creation, which has no qualities we would recognize, such as linear time, dimensionality, solidity, energy, etc. Anything conceivable or perceivable. At the very least, all creation stories, scientific or not, converge on the creation of something out of nothing. Beyond our experience of reality in space-time, there's a field of infinite potential and unbounded possibilities. This pre-created state is therefore always and now, here and everywhere. It is in time, it is not in time, it is local and non-local at the same time. Point number 3, the next point is that the field of all possibilities is conscious. It's consciousness itself. There is no doubt that the existence of consciousness must be accounted for. There are only 2 viable possibilities that can be taken seriously. The matter first. First there was matter and everything else came afterwards. That position holds that mind has its origins in matter and energy, to which some theorists now add information. The mind-first position holds that consciousness is the source of everything, including what we call the experience of matter and energy. If there are only these 2 positions, how do we decide between them? The 2 explanations are incompatible and, more critically, totally self-consistent. It isn't possible to step outside the framework of mind first or matter first to gather evidence. In deciding between mind first and matter first, the crux is a single question. Is it more probable that matter somehow learned to think and that mind can create matter? It seems astonishing to me that more than 90% of scientists are so conditioned to reduce every issue to matter and energy. To use the favored term nowadays, they're called physicalists. They accept without investigation that they accept without investigation the assumption that sugar in a sugar cube, once ingested, can travel past the blood-brain barrier and suddenly think, feel, wish, dream, and do science itself. no one has remotely come close to showing the point in evolutionary history where ordinary molecules acquired consciousness. Therefore, the very notion that the brain is the only thing in creation that has consciousness is untenable in my view. The brain is composed of ordinary atoms and molecules. It didn't become conscious through the random combination of complex organic molecules. Think about this. If the brain evolved through random mutations and natural selection, how did it end up being so rational? How did it? And even our rationality should say that that's a false premise, that Darwinian evolution may be a useful construct, but it's not real. The argument for mind first is much stronger. The simplest argument is the impossibility of the matter first position, which leaves only one viewpoint that can be true. In fact, as I've said, matter is a human construct for perceptual activity in consciousness, which is actually therefore consciousness. Today, people are talking about panpsychism. It's become very popular amongst cosmologists. But panpsychism also assumes the existence of matter. According to panpsychists, consciousness is organized matter. Now, what I'm saying is, actually, matter is organized consciousness, and it's a construct, okay, for perceptual activity. Okay, now let's see this other viewpoint that I think is true. Most people, the argument that mind created matter, think this argument feels like sleight of hand. So let's point to the brain itself, the human brain, where every sensation, image, feeling, and thought pushes brain chemicals around, redirects them to various parts of the body, causes vital signs to change either slowly or abruptly, and actually produces some chemicals, such as neurotransmitters, simply through experiences in consciousness. In physics, the creation of something out of nothing has been lurking in the background as the ultimate question. Yet, with reference to everyday experience, the mystery becomes both personal and self-evident. If someone whispers to you, "I love you," in your ear, the mind-body system will display hundreds of changes dissimilar to what occurs if the words are, "I have a gun pointed to your heart." The deciding factor isn't material in the slightest. It consists of mental activity, the continual production of thoughts, words, meaning, purpose, direction, intention, and so on. It is far from impossible to convince reasonable people that these points are true. They stem from defining consciousness in the most basic, intuitively validated way. Now consider how the argument can be applied to life after death. 1. Consciousness, being non-local, is not subject to birth or death. 2. Even in physicalist terms, there must be a pre-created state beyond time and space. Don Hoffman, my friend, says, space-time as fundamental is doomed in physics. Birth and death, being aspects of linear time, are not present in this state of pure consciousness. 3. An argument can be made that certain abstract experiences, such as mathematics and information, have an indestructible aspect, again immune to birth and death. Information can neither be created or destroyed. Well, information is constantly created, but it cannot be destroyed. Mathematics is constantly refined, but it cannot be destroyed. 4. Body, mind, and the world out there cannot be divorced from our experience. The only reasonable location for body, mind, and the world is in consciousness itself. Again, Lord Krishna, I'm not in the world is in me. I'm not in the body is in me. I'm not in the mind is in me. Prakratim swam vashtabai vishwajami puna puna. Curving back within myself, I create again and again. So 5, if all these statements that I've just made are true, then nothing exists except a modified state of consciousness. Some of these states we identify as matter or call matter, energy, but this is simply a habit built for cultural reasons. There have been societies where mind first was just as self-evident as matter first to us. Having laid out in truncated form the argument for consciousness as the basis of reality, not everyone may be willing to follow the clues that lead to what happens after death. But that isn't as important as realizing that we've been asking the wrong questions all along, and what made them wrong was the exclusion of consciousness. Until we are willing to think fresh thoughts instead of flogging received opinions, religious, scientific, or otherwise, consciousness won't rescue us from an age-old dilemma. If consciousness begins to expand on an individual basis, there is hope for clarity. More importantly, we can begin to bring centuries of baseless fear and superstition to an end. I suggest that ending the superstition of materialism or matter would be a good start. So I'll leave you now to reflect on this. I'll continue if you want me to. Thank you. Have a blissful day.